Thanks for staying with us. I'm Bill O'Reilly in a Weekdays with Bernie segment tonight. If you go to BernardGoldberg.com, you can read a column entitled, "Are Trump Supporters Like Most Americans?" Joining us now from Miami, the author of that column, Bernie Goldberg. So are they?
No. Most Trump supporters are not like most Americans. Most Trump supporters are angrier than most Americans. They're more frustrated than most Americans, and they're more alienated with the political system than most Americans. Now, it is true that most Trump supporters, like most Americans, think we're on the wrong track. But despite that, there's evidence that they're not like most Americans, and I'll give you a very quick example. Recent poll by Quinnipiac, which is fairly typical of other recent polls. 60% of independents don't like Donald Trump. 69% of people between 18 and 34 don't like Donald Trump. 84% of Latinos don't like him, and 87% of black people don't like him. I'm not even sure most Trump supporters are like most white Americans. I'm not even sure if most Trump supporters are like most white Republican voters. The mistake that Trump supporters make is that they are so wrapped up in his magic that they think not only that he'll win the nomination and then the White House, and he may win the nomination, but they think that most Americans think the way they do. But the evidence is
about that
most Americans don't.
I'm not sure. I disagree with you. I think part of the reason that some people who support Donald Trump are so angry is that a lot of people don't see the way they do. But what about my point that I made in the talking points memo?
But Bill, very quickly, the people I hear from, and I think people you hear from probably, think Trump is going to be the next president, not just the nominee. Well, if you think he's going to be the next president, then you got to think that a majority of Americans think the way
they believe, and this is what Trump says, that he'll cultivate a whole new crew of voters who've never turned out, and that he'll have enough numbers. And sure, anything's possible.
He'd have to do that to win.
Let's address my talking points and the Cates Law situation. When I went into that, I said on this program, look, we're going to get this done, because I felt that most lawmakers, both Democrats and Republicans, were honest. Misguided, maybe, zealots ideologically, maybe, but when it came down to a poor woman being killed by a drug-addled thug who defied deportation 5 times, that everyone was going to take action. That turns out to have been not the case. To me, that was the last straw. That was it. I have no confidence in the system now at all. And I'm a pretty educated guy, all right? And I'm not an extremist in any way, shape, or form. Trump knows that millions and millions of Americans have had it, and that he's going to mobilize all of those people. It's a lot like Black Lives Matter. And again, he'd be horrified. The Black Lives Matter crew, they basically hate their country. They hate it, all right? And there's nothing you can say to persuade them out of that. They hate it. Their numbers are a lot less than the Trump numbers, but it's the same powerful emotion. Go.
Right. And because of this frustration, and the so-called experts miscalculated how angry and how frustrated and how alienated people were, that accounts for the Trump magic. But and it's a very important point. A guy named Steve wrote a comment about the column on the website. And he said, you remember those people who went on TV, in the 70s and 80s, and they had cancer, and they said, I'm using Laetrile because Laetrile is the magic drug, and the pharmaceutical establishment doesn't want anybody to know about it, but I'm using Laetrile. And you know what happened? They all took Laetrile and they all died. And then he says this. I'm going to read a very, very brief point, but it's very, very intelligent, very incisive. He says, that's how the Trump supporters are. They are so desperate to get out of living in modern America that they're willing to believe Trump's cynical nonsense. And the cynical nonsense, in my view, is that he says all these things that he can't deliver on. Well, he just can't deliver. But they don't care. It doesn't matter.
Barack Obama did the same thing and won. So I caution everybody not to get too far out. And we'll see what happens. Bernie, always provocative. Thank you. Watters World.